DreamWorks has created some brilliant villains, and some complete failures. I'm going to break them down one by one, analyzing each villain individually. Starting with Tai Lung, he isn't just a typical antagonist, he's the embodiment of immense talent corrupted by unchecked ambition and deep rejection.
You always knew. But when Oogway said otherwise, what did you do? What did you do?
His story is a complex study of limitless potential, parental expectations, and the relentless pursuit of recognition, elements that make him truly unforgettable. Tai Lung's journey begins with Shifu's compassion. Taken in as a cub and raised as his own son, the young snow leopard flourished under devoted mentorship, displaying extraordinary aptitude for kung fu. He mastered countless scrolls and developed a unique fighting style, the leopard style, capable of delivering precise, nerve-striking attacks with lethal accuracy. Blinded by pride and unwavering belief that Tai Lung was destined to become the dragon warrior, Shifu nurtured that flame of excellence, unknowingly planting the seeds of a tragic and inevitable downfall. The crucial turning point came when Master Oogway, guided by wisdom, denied Tai Lung the dragon scroll after sensing the darkness growing within his heart. That rejection, amplified by Shifu's failure to defend him, ignited a devastating fury. Tai Lung's motivation wasn't merely about power. At its core, it was a desperate cry for validation. He wanted recognition for a lifetime devoted to a promise that was never fulfilled. Feeling betrayed by the father figure who shaped him, his pain transformed into uncontrollable rage, culminating in his 20-year imprisonment in the fortress of Chorgom. His escape from Chorgom stands as proof of his intelligence and martial mastery. Shackled for 2 decades, Tai Lung used nothing but a single goose feather to disable what was considered an impenetrable security system. The sequence, a brutal ballet of strength and precision, establishes him as an epic-level threat, capable of annihilating an army of rhinoceros guards with terrifying efficiency, relying not on mystical artifacts, but solely on his own skill. What truly elevates Tai Lung, however, is the emotional depth of his conflict with Shifu. Tai Lung wasn't only after the dragon scroll, he longed for Shifu's admission of fault, for the validation that had always been withheld.
I was in jail for 20 years because of your weakness.
Obeying your master is not weakness.
You knew I was the dragon warrior. You always knew.
It was never my decision to make.
It is now.
This complex dynamic gives him tragic humanity, transforming him from a one-dimensional villain into a distorted reflection of how pride and ambition can corrupt even the most gifted soul. Ian McShane's vocal performance is fundamental to Tai Lung's presence. His voice carries both charisma and authority, conveying arrogance and vulnerability in equal measure. Every line resonates with weight and meaning, making the character unforgettable. Tai Lung isn't a forgettable antagonist. He commands every scene he appears in, solidifying his status as one of DreamWorks' most impactful and memorable villains. He stands as a landmark in animation, a reminder that the greatest danger can come from within, fueled by wounded pride and rejection. The figure of Drago Bloodvist, from How to Train Your Dragon 2, sparks intense debate. For many, he represents the darkest and most ruthless side of the franchise, an antagonist who divides opinion when it comes to his effectiveness. While some consider him one of DreamWorks' weakest villains, Drago undeniably functions as a powerful force, a character who, despite the criticism, left a lasting mark.
Pick up! Son!
Dad! No!
Drago Bloodvist is often labeled as one-dimensional by critics and parts of the audience. His motivation, to dominate the world and enslave dragons, is frequently seen as a classic villain cliché, lacking the psychological complexity that defines other DreamWorks antagonists. He doesn't possess the calculated cunning of Grimmel, the villain of How to Train Your Dragon, the hidden world, whom many consider superior from a writing standpoint. It's common to find film forums and ranking lists placing Drago among the studio's weaker villains precisely because of this perceived lack of depth. However, that perspective doesn't fully capture his impact. Drago's strength lies in his brutal simplicity and overwhelming presence. He doesn't need intricate motivations to be terrifying. He embodies fear and absolute control. His arrival in the Viking archipelago is nothing short of cataclysmic, a display of power that completely destabilizes the world Hiccup and his friends thought they understood. What truly makes him iconic, at least to me, is his scream.
No! Let me show you.
That scream isn't just a technical tool for control, it's the ultimate expression of his indomitable will, and a chilling symbol of his tyranny. The way he manipulates and terrorizes dragons, turning them into weapons of war under his absolute command, is visceral and disturbing. It exposes a darker side of the human-dragon relationship that the franchise had never explored with such raw intensity. And yes, his scream is also unintentionally hilarious. Drago Bloodvist represents an existential threat. He doesn't merely seek revenge, he seeks the annihilation of an entire way of life, and the subjugation of all living creatures. His unwavering determination and cruelty make him a formidable adversary, forcing Hiccup to confront the true nature of evil.
I'm trying to protect our dragons and stop a war. How is that irresponsible?
Because war is what he wants, son! Because Drago Bloodvist is a madman without conscience or mercy. And if he's built a dragon army, God's help us all.
While critics may point to his lack of nuance, it is precisely that relentless nature that cements him as an impactful villain. He stands as a stark reminder that not all evil requires a complex justification to be terrifying, and his imposing figure, paired with that unforgettable scream, remains one of the most striking elements of the How to Train Your Dragon saga. If Drago Bloodvist imposes his tyranny through brute force and fear, the next figure in our analysis transcends simple villainy, becoming a force of nature, an inevitable entity. We move from the physical control of dragons to confronting the ultimate end itself, death, from Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. This antagonist is not a villain in the traditional sense. He doesn't seek power, wealth, or revenge. The wolf is the personification of death, a cosmic entity that manifests to collect the price of a life squandered. His arrival is always preceded by a chilling whistle, a sound that freezes the spine and signals that the end is near.
Come on, Puss in Boots. He's kind of like... Oh my god, that's terrifying. That wolf bounty hunter is scary. We're all a bit nervous.
He doesn't bargain, he doesn't get distracted, and he cannot be bribed. His mission is simple and merciless: to claim the soul of Puss in Boots, who, through arrogance and recklessness, wasted 8 of his 9 lives.
Okay, one more number. I call this one, The Legend Will Never Die.
The wolf's power lies in his overwhelming presence and the symbolism he carries. He doesn't need an army or elaborate schemes. His mere existence is a constant threat. Every encounter with Puss is a visceral reminder of mortality, forcing the hero to confront his deepest fears and reevaluate the value of his final life. The wolf is the antithesis of everything Puss represents: recklessness, invincibility, and carefree bravado. He is the mirror reflecting life's fragility and the inevitability of its end. His calculated coldness and combat skills are unmatched. His glowing red eyes and calm yet menacing voice create an atmosphere of dread that lingers in every scene he appears in.
If it isn't Puss in Boots himself. Puss is on his final life, and my character, the wolf, is looking to collect it. In the flesh. Check out this.
He doesn't seek the glory of victory, only the completion of a natural cycle. That approach elevates him to a level of existential villainy, making him one of the most original and impactful antagonists in DreamWorks history. He isn't just an obstacle, he's a lesson, a catalyst for the hero's transformation, and his presence remains a dark reminder that, in the end, death always wins. From the existential terror of death, we move to the Chameleon from Kung Fu Panda 4, a villain with great potential but questionable execution. The Chameleon is an antagonist who, despite her impressive abilities, often appears on lists of DreamWorks' weakest villains. Her premise is undeniably intriguing: a sorceress capable of shape-shifting and absorbing the kung fu skills of other masters. However, for many critics and viewers, the execution of her character, and especially her motivation, fails to reach the emotional depth and impact of her predecessors in the franchise. One of the main criticisms lies in her motivation. While villains like Tai Lung were driven by painful rejection and a desperate need for validation, and Lord Shen by a haunting prophecy and calculated annihilation, the Chameleon seems fueled by a more generic hunger for power and recognition. Her backstory, being underestimated and dismissed because of her small stature, doesn't resonate with the same emotional weight. As a result, she feels less layered and ultimately less memorable.
I wanted respect and power. I wanted to be a master of Kung Fu. I was turned away from every training hall I went to. They would say I was too small, too lowly, and that Kung Fu was not my destiny.
Additionally, her ability to mimic other masters, though visually compelling, is viewed by some as a missed opportunity. Instead of delivering original confrontations, she channels the abilities of Tai Lung, Lord Shen, and Kai. For many fans, this choice dilutes both the novelty and the threat she's meant to represent. She becomes, in a way, a compilation villain, borrowing the legacy of others without establishing a truly distinct identity of her own. Her key moments, such as manipulating Jen and attempting to absorb Po's chi, clearly demonstrate her power, yet the lack of a deeper emotional connection with the audience prevents her from being genuinely terrifying. She is cunning and dangerous, but her cruelty feels more surface level, lacking the dramatic intensity that defined Po's previous adversaries. Visually striking as she may be, the Chameleon never fully cements herself as a palpable or psychologically complex threat. The result is the lingering sense of unrealized potential, solidifying her place among DreamWorks' less celebrated antagonists. From the wasted potential of the Chameleon, we dive into a villain who masterfully redefines a classic archetype, the Fairy Godmother from Shrek 2. At first glance, she appears wrapped in the warm aura of benevolence we expect from a fairy godmother, but Shrek 2 brilliantly subverts that image, revealing a ruthless, corporate-minded figure driven entirely by self-interest. She isn't the guardian of dreams, she's the architect of a manufactured happily ever after, where love is transactional and beauty is mandatory. She embodies the deconstruction of the fairy tale itself, proving that not all magic comes with good intentions, and that the pursuit of perfection can become the cruelest tyranny of all. Her presence acts as a distorted mirror of childhood fantasy, exposing the hypocrisy behind unattainable ideals and the social pressure to conform to prepackaged versions of happiness. Her motivation is clear and deeply rooted in power and tradition, ensuring that her son, Prince Charming, marries Princess Fiona, securing her influence over the kingdom of Far, Far Away.
Fiona and Charming will be together.
Yes.
Oh, believe me, Harold, it's what's best. Not only for your daughter, but for your kingdom.
To achieve this, she manipulates King Harold through an old pact and emotional blackmail, pushing him to betray his own daughter. She deploys magical potions, stages romantic setups, and weaves a web of calculated intrigue designed to tear Shrek and Fiona apart. The fairy godmother operates behind the scenes, wearing a sweet smile while executing a dark agenda. She weaponizes her public image as a benevolent benefactor to mask her true ambitions, building an empire of customizable, happily ever afters. Her moments in the film are unforgettable, cementing her status as one of DreamWorks' most iconic villains. Her performance of the song "Holding Out for a Hero" is a masterclass in theatrical villainy. What was once an anthem of hope and rescue becomes, in her hands, a triumphant declaration of manipulation and control, delivered with a flair that is both hilarious and genuinely menacing. The Fairy Godmother stands as a sharp satire of the fairy tale industry and the toxic pressure surrounding beauty and idealized happiness. She exemplifies DreamWorks' talent for flipping cultural icons on their heads, transforming a beloved archetype into an antagonist who is both comedic and legitimately threatening. She remains one of the franchise's greatest triumphs, a villain who truly earns the title of the best through originality and lasting impact. From the sophisticated manipulation of the Fairy Godmother, who brilliantly subverted a classic archetype, we move to a villain whose very simplicity places him, for many, among the worst. Professor Poopypants from Captain Underpants. Professor Poopypants is an antagonist who fully embraces childish humor and absurdity. His premise is undeniably funny, a brilliant scientist who becomes a supervillain because no one takes him seriously due to his ridiculous name.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Here, take the award. It's just
Well, it's really fun to say poopy pants.
You give me stuff I don't want! I don't want it anymore!
While this motivation fits perfectly within the tone of the film, it's often criticized for lacking depth and complexity, especially when compared to DreamWorks' more psychologically layered villains. His moments in the movie are packed with outrageous inventions and over-the-top schemes, like his attempt to eliminate laughter from the world with the Rideau Ray. He functions well within the cartoonish universe of Captain Underpants, where logic always comes second to comedy. However, that same exaggerated nature prevents him from being perceived as a genuine threat or generating the same tension as other antagonists. His villainy feels more like an extended punchline than a force to be feared. The absence of a complex dramatic arc, or a motivation that goes beyond ego and frustration over his name, distances him from villains with tragic or ideological journeys. Professor Poopypants is an entertaining but predictable obstacle, whose defeat is practically guaranteed once Captain Underpants steps in. He doesn't challenge the protagonist on a deep emotional level, nor does he represent an existential threat. While iconic for younger audiences and faithful to his literary origins, he ultimately solidifies his place among DreamWorks' less celebrated villains, those who, despite being fun and memorable in their own way, never quite transcend comedy to join the pantheon of truly great antagonists. Now we rise to a villain who, for many, represents the pinnacle of DreamWorks antagonists, Lord Shen, from Kung Fu Panda 2. He transcends the figure of the villain for the sake of being evil, presenting a tragic depth and brutal elegance that make him unforgettable and, for many, fascinating. Lord Shen's story is a web of ambition, fear, and wounded pride. As the prince of the royal family of Gongmen City, he became obsessed with gunpowder, viewing it not as a tool for celebration, but as a means of power. A dark prophecy, foretelling his defeat at the hands of a warrior in black and white, a panda, led him to a desperate act, the massacre of the pandas.
She foretold that if Shen continued down this dark path, he would be defeated by a warrior of black and white.
This horrific act, driven by fear and the belief that he was altering his destiny, resulted in his exile, deeply wounding his pride and fueling his thirst for revenge. This complex motivation, blending trauma, fear, and a misguided attempt to control his fate, generates a dark empathy from the audience, who understands the origin of his darkness. Years later, Shen returns with a devastating weapon, gunpowder-powered cannons, determined to conquer Gongmen City and all of China, destroying Kung Fu in the process. His actions are relentless. He kills Master Thundering Rhino, takes control of the city, and confronts Po. What makes Shen so loved is how he becomes a catalyst for Po's growth. The confrontation between them is not just physical, it's an ideological and emotional clash. Shen represents Po's traumatic past, the pain of losing his family. He forces Po to confront his origins and find inner peace, turning trauma into strength. This hero-villain dynamic is rich, as Shen acts as a mirror to Po, a foe who challenges him to transcend vengeance and embrace acceptance.
Did you find peace? I took away your parents. Everything. I scarred you for life.
See, that's the thing, Shen. Scars heal.
Beyond his narrative depth, Lord Shen is visually stunning and charismatic. His design as a white peacock with elaborate feathers, regal attire, and exotic weapons like the gunpowder cannons creates a striking aesthetic. The imposing voice of Gary Oldman in the original adds layers of coldness and elegance to his brutality.
Find this panda and bring him to me. Find this.
He commits atrocities but does so with strategy and calculated coldness, never in an empty or mindless way. His downfall is not just a simple victory of good over evil. It's the result of his refusal to let go of the past and accept change, culminating in his crushing death by his own cannon. Lord Shen is a villain who, due to his complexity, crucial role in the hero's development, and iconic presence, solidifies his place as one of the most beloved and respected villains in DreamWorks. For many, He is even considered the best villain of the entire Kung Fu Panda franchise. From the strategic genius and personal tragedy of Lord Shen, who raised the bar for DreamWorks villains, we fall to an antagonist, who for many represents the opposite. Makunga, from Madagascar, escaped to Africa. At first glance, Makunga feels familiar. His ambition to overthrow Zuba, Alex's father, through manipulation and calculated challenges, immediately evokes the shadow of the Lion King's Scar. Ironically, that resemblance is one of his greatest weaknesses. Makunga is often criticized for feeling like a diluted, less charismatic version of Disney's iconic villain. Where Scar was cunning, cruel, and musically unforgettable, Makunga comes across as a self-serving opportunist, whose vanity ultimately outweighs his intelligence. His key moments revolve around manipulation that works, but only briefly, exposing his superficiality. He challenges Zuba for leadership, deceives Alex into participating in a rite of passage he barely understands, and orchestrates the exile of Alex's family, all in pursuit of personal power. Yet once in charge, his leadership proves ineffective. His schemes unravel quickly, and his eventual defeat, though played for comedy, highlights just how little of a true threat he ever was. The central criticism of Makunga lies in his lack of originality and depth. He doesn't have a tragic past that fuels his cruelty, nor a complex ideology that elevates him into a formidable adversary. His motivation boils down to envy and a hunger for status, without the psychological layers that make villains like Tai Lung or Lord Shen so compelling. Makunga functions as a narrative obstacle for Alex and Zuba, but he rarely transcends that role to become memorable on his own merits. He serves as a reminder that sometimes, even an entertaining imitation can't quite capture the grandeur of the original. From Makunga's shallow opportunism, which barely scratches the surface of true villainy, we rise to an antagonist who embodies fear in its purest form, Pitch Black, from Rise of the Guardians. Pitch Black is the very essence of childhood terror, a shadowy figure who feeds on insecurities and nightmares. His motivation goes far beyond a simple thirst for power or revenge. What he truly craves is recognition. He wants to be believed in. He wants to be feared. He wants his place in the world of childhood faith and imagination.
Maybe I want what you have. To be believed in. Maybe I'm tired of hiding under beds.
That psychological depth establishes him as one of DreamWorks' most complex and fascinating villains. He doesn't merely want to destroy joy, he wants children to believe in him so that he can finally exist fully, leaving an indelible mark on their minds. His story is one of rejection. He was once something different, but was cast into the shadows, forgotten and dismissed. That rejection transformed him, but it also gave him an intimate understanding of fear, which he wields as his most powerful weapon. He invades the mind, twists dreams, and plants doubt, eroding children's faith in the Guardians. His attacks are subtle yet devastating, turning innocence into terror and hope into despair. Pitch is a master at exploiting loneliness, insecurity, and disbelief, converting them into his own source of strength. The scene where Pitch tempts Jack, offering him a place by his side, stands out as a powerful moment, revealing the depth of his loneliness and his desire to belong. His dark elegance and ability to materialize from the shadows make him a constant and menacing presence. It's also worth noting that Rise of the Guardians is one of DreamWorks' most underrated animated films, and genuinely a very fun one. The movie not only delivers a top-tier villain, but also builds a rich universe filled with compelling characters that deserve far more recognition. Pitch Black reflects the film's narrative strength. He doesn't just challenge the heroes physically, he confronts them on an existential level, forcing them to question the very nature of belief and fear. Through his psychological depth, haunting aesthetic, and central role in such a powerful story, Pitch firmly secures his place among the greatest villains DreamWorks has ever created. An antagonist who, with her obsessive and exaggerated cruelty, has become one of the most hated. Captain Chantal Dubois from Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted. She is the relentless head of the animal control in Monaco, whose primary motivation is to mount Alex the lion's head as her final trophy, immediately positioning her as a villain with gratuitous evil and no real depth. Dubois is the embodiment of relentless pursuit. She chases the animals with a frightening determination, using every tool at her disposal, from ropes and poisoned darts to computers and scent trails. Her obsession leads her to escape prison and chase the animals across Europe in a series of pursuits that, for many, break the suspension of disbelief due to their implausibility. Her willingness to harm animals for pure revenge makes her deeply unpleasant. However, what contributes most to fan hatred is how her villainy is presented. Many see her as a caricatured villain, overly theatrical, which undermines her credibility as a real threat. The humor injected into her scenes, with her failures and comedic quips, ends up draining the tension she should create. Her shallow motivation, focused only on a trophy, and the lack of development in her backstory make her seem like a one-dimensional antagonist. In the climax, she is defeated and humiliated, sent back to Madagascar in a zoo cage. Chantal Dubois, with her blatant cruelty and lack of subtlety, fails to be a memorable villain for her qualities, but rather for her ability to irritate, solidifying her position as one of the most hated villains in DreamWorks.